I was still standing at my mother's graveside when a woman I didn't recognize stepped closer. Not too close, just enough that I could hear her without anyone else noticing. "Before you leave," she said quietly, "you need to call this number." She placed a small card into my hand without even looking at it, like she'd done it before, like she'd been waiting to. Then she added something that didn't make sense. "Tell them Margaret's daughter is ready." Ready? For what? I didn't ask. I think part of me already knew the answer wasn't going to be simple. The ground was still soft from the rain the night before. Every step felt uncertain, like I was standing on something that hadn't settled yet. There were 11 people at the service. I counted twice. My mother had lived in Portland for over 30 years, and somehow, this was all that was left standing around her. She was an ICU nurse, 32 years, the kind of person who never raised her voice, never made a scene, never asked for more than she needed. She drove a 10-year-old Subaru, kept a small garden, called me every Sunday morning at 9 like it was part of the structure of the world. And when she died, I thought I understood the life she had lived. I was wrong. But I didn't know that yet. At that moment, standing there with that card in my hand, I still believed my mother's life was exactly what it looked like. Simple, predictable, small in all the ways that feel safe. She was an ICU nurse for 32 years at Providence, Portland. The kind of nurse families remember, but rarely really know. When she retired, it wasn't a big event, no speeches, no ceremony, just a sheet cake in the break room, a paper plate, and a photo of her smiling the same way she always did, calm, steady, almost like she didn't need anything more than that. She drove a 10-year-old Subaru with a cracked dashboard. Not because she had to, just because it still worked. She kept a small garden in the backyard. Tomatoes, mostly. Every spring, like clockwork, and every Sunday morning at exactly 9 a.m., my phone would ring. "How are you sleeping?" she'd ask. Not, "How are you doing?" Not, "Are you happy?" Sleeping. Like that was the question that told her everything she needed to know. When she died, it was a Tuesday afternoon. In her kitchen, a stroke. Her neighbor called me because my mother had planned for that too. Quietly, years in advance. There were 11 people at the service. I counted twice. 31 years in the same city, and somehow, that was all. Her will was 2 pages long. The house. About $11,000 in savings. A car. Furniture. A few pieces of jewelry. Everything modest. Everything accounted for. That was the life I thought she had lived. A woman who took care of things, asked for very little, and left just enough behind to be neatly sorted. I remember standing in her kitchen that night, looking around at everything she had kept in order for so long, and thinking, this is all there is. That's what I thought, until I saw the notebook. It was sitting on her nightstand like it always had. I'd noticed it before, assumed it was a journal, something private, something small. This time, I picked it up. Inside, it wasn't thoughts, it was records, names, dates, amounts, tuition first semester, rent through March, medical transport approved, dozens of them, going back nearly 20 years. I sat there on the edge of her bed, reading, and for the first time, I realized I hadn't known her as well as I thought. And once that idea settles in, it doesn't let you sit still for long. I called the number the next morning. A man answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, not warm, not cold, just practiced. I gave him my name, then my mother's. There was a pause, maybe 3 seconds, long enough to feel intentional. "We've been expecting your call," he said. "Expecting. Are you available to come to Seattle?" I asked why. "It's easier to explain in person," he said. "Your mother wanted it that way." That was all he offered. I booked a train that afternoon. The ride north took a little over 3 hours. I remember watching the water more than anything else, trying to fit what I'd seen in that notebook into the life I thought I understood. It didn't fit. Not cleanly. His office was near the waterfront. No sign you'd notice unless you were looking for it, just a small brass plate. Harris Financial Advisory. Inside, it smelled like paper and coffee. The kind of place where things are handled quietly and correctly. Dr. Harris was in his late 60s. He shook my hand, offered me water, then sat down like he wasn't in a hurry to say anything wrong. He opened a folder and looked at me once before speaking. "Your mother," he said, "was a very precise woman." I nodded. "I know." He held my gaze for a moment. then added, "She came to me in 2004, already doing something she hadn't told you about." I felt that land before I understood it. "There's a letter," he said. He placed it on the desk between us. I knew the handwriting immediately. Block letters. Careful. Deliberate. The way she wrote when she wanted to be understood. Not just read. I didn't open it right away. Some part of me already knew whatever was inside. It was going to change how I saw her. When I finally did, the paper was the same pale blue she kept by the phone at home. "If you're reading this," she wrote, "then I ran out of time to say it out loud, and I owe you an explanation." I could hear her voice in that line. Calm. Direct. No drama. She wrote about the ICU. Not the emergencies, not the machines, but what came after. The bills. The silence in waiting rooms. The way a family can survive the worst night of their life and still lose everything a few months later. She said that's where she started. 1 semester of tuition for a patient's daughter. A mortgage payment for a coworker's widow. Small things. Then more. "I didn't tell you," she wrote, "because I didn't want it to change anything. I wanted you to know me as your mother first. The rest is structure." I had to stop reading for a second, because suddenly, all the smallness I thought I understood about her, it wasn't small at all. It was controlled, intentional. At the bottom of the page, she left me with one line. "I'm not leaving you wealth. I'm leaving you a responsibility." I read it twice, and somewhere between the first and second time, I understood. This wasn't about what she had built. It was about what she expected me to carry forward. I understood that. My brother didn't. He called as my train pulled into Union Station. "You've been quiet," he said. "I was in Seattle." A pause. "Seattle? What's in Seattle?" I looked out at the platform before answering. Mom had a financial advisor there. There were accounts I didn't know about. "How much?" Always straight to the number. "It's not a checking account," I said. "It's a foundation." Another pause. Shorter this time. Sharper. "A foundation," he repeated. "What does that mean for us?" "For us? It means she built something," I said. "Something that wasn't meant to be divided." Silence. Then, "How much?" I closed my eyes for a second. "About 9 million. He exhaled hard. Not surprise calculation. $9 million. And she never helped me with the second restaurant. "She helped you twice," I said. "I know about the loans." That was different. His voice shifted. Not louder, just firmer. Like he'd stepped into an argument he already believed he deserved to win. "That was personal," he said. "This is an estate asset." "It's a non-profit foundation," I said. "It's not an inheritance." "You might want to talk to a lawyer before you say that." "I will." I didn't tell him I already knew what they were going to say. He hung up first. 4 days later, he drove up from San Francisco. That told me everything I needed to know. He walked into the house like he always had, like it was still his, like nothing had changed. But this time, he didn't sit back. He looked around, measured things. "It's a nice place," he said. "It is." He sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a notepad. Didn't ask, just assumed. "Walk me through it." So I did. The foundation, the structure, the 20 years of quiet giving, the rules, the purpose. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he tapped the table lightly with his pen. "She built all of that, and didn't say a word." "No." He looked up at me. Really looked this time. "And you're in charge of it. I'm responsible for it." He let that sit for a second. "You know how this looks." "I do." "She leaves you control of $9 million and leaves me a car with a cracked dashboard?" "She left you a car," I said. "The foundation was never ours." His jaw tightened. "You always had a better relationship with her." That one landed where he meant it to. "We talked every Sunday," I said. "You could have called too." The second it came out, I knew it was too sharp, but I didn't take it back. He stood up, slow this time. "I'm going to have my attorney look at this." "Okay." He grabbed his notepad, paused at the door. "She could have told us." I thought about the letter, the notebook, the way she had lived her whole life. "She did," I said. "We just weren't paying attention." He didn't answer that, just walked out. The filing came 3 weeks later. Legal language. Clean. Clinical. Claims about estate assets. Undue influence. Preferential treatment. It read like a transaction, like everything else he had said. But underneath it, I could hear something else. Not greed. Not exactly. Something older than that. The kind of quiet distance that builds over years. Until one day, it looks like something else entirely. That's what walked into the courtroom with us. Multnomah County Courthouse. Wood-paneled walls. Fluorescent lights that made everything feel flatter than it was. I sat at one table. My brother sat at another. He looked tired. Not just from the case, from something older. The anger was still there, but it wasn't the only thing anymore. When they called the case, his attorney stood first. He spoke in clean, confident lines about assets, disclosure, intent, about how the foundation had been structured in a way that excluded family, about how my role as trustee looked like a transfer that should have been part of probate. It sounded reasonable. That was the point. Then Ruth Callahan stood. She didn't raise her voice, didn't rush. The Steady Work Foundation was established in 2004, she said, 17 years before Miss Hayes's death. It has been properly filed, consistently maintained, and fully compliant. There is no probate claim that reaches backward into a legally established nonprofit. No extra words. Just structure. The judge asked for documentation and set a second hearing. That gave him something to hold on to. The second time, we came back with everything. 20 years of records. Investment histories. Disbursements. IRS filings. A life. Documented in quiet decisions. Dr. Harris took the stand. Same calm voice. Same careful pace. He walked through it all: timeline, purpose, structure. When my brother's attorney suggested that maybe the foundation had been shaped by outside influence, Dr. Harris didn't react. Margaret Hayes designed this herself, he said. She came to me with a clear understanding of what she wanted to accomplish. My role was administrative. Her values were entirely her own. That was it. No defense. No emotion. Just truth, stated plainly. The judge recessed. The room went quiet in that specific way courtrooms do, like everyone is holding their breath without admitting it. When she came back, she didn't take long. 2 sentences. The foundation predates any probate claim by 17 years. A pause. The petition is dismissed. That was it. No reaction. No sound. Just the kind of silence that comes when something has been settled the right way. Whether you're ready for it or not. I stood up. He didn't. Not right away. I waited near the door while Ruth Callahan gathered her files, the room already moving on to the next case like nothing had happened. When he finally stepped into the hallway, he stopped beside me, not looking at me, not leaving either. You really weren't going to let it go, he said. No. That was all I had for him. He nodded once, staring at the floor like he was trying to find a version of this that made more sense. She never told me, he said. Not one word. She didn't tell me either, I said. That part mattered. He looked up then. There was something different in it now. Not just anger. Something older. But she trusted you with it. I took a breath. She trusted me to protect it, I said. That's not the same as choosing me over you. He held that for a second. I wasn't trying to take anything from you, he said. I know. I just thought. He stopped there, then tried again. I thought she didn't have much. I thought she'd lived her whole life holding back. And it was for nothing. I shook my head. It wasn't for nothing. That landed somewhere. Not all at once. But enough. He exhaled slowly, like something in him had to adjust to a different version of her. Then he nodded, mostly to himself, and walked toward the elevator. He didn't look back. I stayed there a minute longer, thinking about what she had built and what she hadn't left open. There was a clause in the foundation. I hadn't told him yet. A family provision. Structured, conditional, annual distributions tied to financial counseling, review periods, accountability, not a blank check, a boundary. She had thought of him. She just believed that help should hold its shape, or it wouldn't help at all. I didn't tell him that in the hallway. Not yet. Some things you don't say in passing. I drove down to San Francisco the following Thursday. 6 hours on the road gives you time to think about what matters and what doesn't. His place was near the Embarcadero, 4th floor. Same view he'd always been proud of. He opened the door in a t-shirt, surprised. You drove 6 hours, he said. You filed a lawsuit, I said. We're even. That got the smallest hint of a smile. Not much, but more than I expected. We sat at his kitchen table. He made coffee without asking if I wanted any. That was something our mother used to do. I noticed it. I'm not here to win, I said. He didn't respond right away. just watched me like he was trying to decide if that was true. There's a provision, I said. She wrote it herself. Structured family support. Conditional. Financial counseling. Review periods. I let that sit before I added. It's not a lump sum, and it's not automatic, but it's there. He leaned back slightly, processing. So I have to prove I deserve it. You have to make sure it helps, I said. That's all she cared about. He looked down at his coffee. You think I'm the problem. I think she spent 30 years watching what happens when money shows up without structure, I said. Good intentions don't always fix anything. He didn't argue that. Not right away. I wasn't reckless, he said after a minute. The restaurant. I really thought it would work. I know. She helped me twice, he said. And she never made me feel small about it. That part mattered to him. I could hear it. And then she builds something like that. He shook his head. And doesn't say a word. She didn't want it to change how you saw her, I said. He exhaled slowly. She was protecting me from it. She was protecting all of us. We sat there for a while after that. No argument. No urgency. Just the kind of quiet that lets things settle into place. I'm going to keep running the foundation, I said finally. That part isn't negotiable. He nodded once. But you don't have to be outside of it. That landed differently. He looked at me really looked this time. I'd need a good financial counselor, he said. I already have a name. That almost made him laugh. Of course you do. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. His debt. Timelines. What a realistic 5-year plan would look like if he actually followed it. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't inspiring. It was numbers. Accountability. But somewhere in the middle of it, it stopped feeling like a fight, and started feeling like something we should have been doing a long time ago. When I stood up to leave, he walked me to the door. She built all of that, he said. For strangers? For people who needed it, I said. He nodded slowly. And she still called you every Sunday. She called because she wanted to, I said. Not because I asked. He leaned against the doorframe. I didn't call much, toward the end. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Some things don't need structure to be understood. But this did. It took me a while to realize that. The first year, I wasn't sure I was doing it right. There were nights I stayed up past midnight at my kitchen table, going through applications one by one, names I didn't know, stories I couldn't verify beyond what was in front of me, trying to decide who qualified and who had to wait. She hadn't left instructions for that part, just the structure, and the expectation that I would learn. Some days, it felt heavier than anything she could have written down. But then there were the reports, quarterly, precise, quiet, and inside them, you could see it working. A nursing student in Tennessee finished her degree that December. A father in Ohio kept his home after his wife's cancer treatment because 6 months of mortgage had been covered. A 12-year-old in Seattle, her father died during a hospital shift, and now her college tuition is already waiting for her. I never met any of them. That was the point. There was no name attached. No plaque. No gala. Just decisions, made the right way. Over and over again. The foundation kept moving exactly as she designed it. Steady. Unnoticed. Effective. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking if I was doing it like she would have, and started understanding that this was what she meant. It took me a year to understand that fully. A year later, we both ended up at the cemetery on the same morning. Not planned. Just the kind of thing that tells you something has shifted. It was her birthday. The grass had grown back in. The ground felt steady again. Someone had left a small bunch of yellow flowers at the base of her headstone. I didn't know who. That felt right. My brother stood beside me, hands in his pockets, quieter than I remembered him being a year ago. Not dramatically different. Just adjusted. He'd finished a full year of financial counseling, closed 2 credit lines, stopped pretending he had everything under control when he didn't. He'd started calling on Sundays. Not every week, but enough that I'd stopped being surprised when my phone rang at 9 a.m. He looked at her name for a long moment. I used to think she held back, he said. I nodded. She did, I said. Just not in the way you meant. He glanced at me. She held back everything she could have spent on herself. He exhaled slowly. $9 million. 9.2 now, I said. It's still growing. That almost made him smile. That sounds like her. It does. We stood there a while longer, the the wind moving lightly through the trees like it always had. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For all of it. The lawsuit. The way I handled things." "You were scared," I said. He nodded. "It felt like she chose you." I let that sit for a second before answering. "She chose me to maintain it," I said. "That's not the same as loving me more." He didn't argue with that. "She loved you the same way she loved everyone she ever took care of," I said. Quietly, without making it a performance. Something in his shoulders eased after that. Not gone. Just lighter. On the drive home, I thought about the first time I read her letter. The way those words had settled into me slowly, like they needed time to become true. Her notebook sits on my desk now. Same format. Different handwriting. New names. New dates. A semester. A mortgage. A medical bill. The numbers change. The work doesn't. She didn't leave me instructions on how to feel about any of it. She left me instructions on what to do. That turned out to matter more. If you have someone in your life who lives quietly, who doesn't take up much space, who shows up the same way, over and over again, pay attention. It's easy to mistake that kind of life for something small. It isn't. Some people just choose to build their lives at a lower volume, because they're putting that energy somewhere else, somewhere you might not see, until it's already changed everything. Sometimes the most meaningful lives are the quietest ones. It's easy to measure success by what's visible: income, status, recognition, but real impact often happens out of sight, built slowly through discipline and intention. This story reminds us that money can reveal character, but responsibility defines it. Not everything we're given is meant to be kept or divided. Some things are meant to be carried forward. Pay attention to the people who live simply but show up consistently. Their lives may look small, but they often hold the deepest purpose. And before it's too late, take the time to truly see them for who they are.